Hello, and welcome to Get Recc'd. I am your host, Stephen Falgout.
And I am your other host, Louis Falgo. And
That's our show.
thanks for watching. Get Recc'd is our funny little podcast, a silly little show, where each episode, us, two brethren, if you will, recommend media to each other. I will recommend something to Steven. Steven will recommend something to me. And then the next episode, we will get together and discuss those recommendations.
And boy, do we have some recommendations to discuss today.
Oh, yes, they are.
It was a windy one out there in Recommendation City.
Yeah, it was Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which is actually what we're talking about today. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 1 and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs cast. All things Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Oh, yeah.
Every episode, we discuss 5 minutes of the movie for eternity. Only the first 5 minutes. We discuss the same first 5 minutes every episode.
The biggest Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs fan cast on the internet.
We maintain the wiki on the fandom site.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of which, have you heard, this is unrelated to any podcast, our actual one or our Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs one, but have you heard that people are leaving fandom.com?
No.
Fandom.com apparently is not doing a good job and fans are angry.
No.
Fans of fandom.com out there, you better watch your mouth.
Well, it's funny because I remember when fandom.com made the switch from Wikia to fandom, and it was just really weird and stupid, and I don't know, and I think they're like supposed to be like a kind of like an entertainment news site that just happens to have a shit ton of wikis on it. It's very odd, and I don't understand why they did that, and it upset me very much as the administrator of the Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs wiki.
Let me ask you a question. Does fandom.com have a fandom.com wiki?
I hope so. Could
Where
somebody
they
in the
upkeep
chat
all the...
Could somebody in the chat please go see if there's a fandom wiki on fandom.com?
And if there isn't one, please create it. We will be admins.
Yeah, it'll be great.
For all that fandom.com fandom lore, you know?
Oh, yeah.
The deep, rich lore of fandom.com, where you can learn about how it was once wikia.com.
Yeah. Those are the golden days, but those are long since gone. The corporate takeover of wikia.com has occurred.
Yeah, freaking shills, you know what I'm saying?
It's
Come on. Big fandom, get out of here.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
All right, with that interlude, why don't we go ahead and move on and get this thing rolling?
Yeah, to the thing that you recommended to me, Steven, which why don't you go ahead and introduce the audience to this?
So I recommended to you My Everything, the Ariana Grande album, her second album. Came out in a year. I want to say
2014. It says it on the screen.
14?
2014.
Yeah, 2014.
It says it on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ariana Grande, which actually, before we start this, I'm going to say Grande, but I heard a interview recently where she said her own surname, and apparently it's pronounced Grandy.
Oh.
So maybe we should say Grandy, but I have said Grande. But anyway, Ariana was she's an actress. She became a musician. She was originally on some Nickelodeon shows, I want to say, and then she kind of started her solo performing career, and now she's probably more known for her musical performances. But as I mentioned, this was her second solo album.
Yeah, so Steven, I'm actually going to flip this one around a little bit. I'm going to do the old flipperino.
Flip it in, reverse it.
I'm going to surprise you a little bit. And Steven, what I would like to do for this rec is ask you, what do you think of this album, Steven?
Oh, no, hold up. You can't just come in here.
Well, I did.
New host of the podcast, Louis.
Well, I did.
flip our template.
Guess what I just did, Steven? I am asking you first because I don't worry, I have things to say, but I would like to know.
Yeah, so let's mark this date. This is September 28th, 2018. Whoever upkeeps the Get Recc'd fandom wiki, make sure that you note that this is the episode, this is the date where the template, the script has been reversed.
It has been, everything has been destroyed.
I'm not sure.
Sorry, Alexa is yelling at me. Oh, and then I said Alexa again, so now she's going to yell at me again. Anyway, well, what do you want to know? What thoughts of mine would you like?
I think
to
you
hear,
know
Louis?
very well what I want to know, Steven.
I think you want to know, do I like this thing?
That's what I want to know.
I do like this thing. I want to mention before I give my thoughts. I don't know if I like this thing as much as I liked her first thing. I actually thought her breakout album was probably better than this one. Her breakout album felt like it had a little more originality. A lot of the tracks there were sort of like very akin to 90s R&B. She was getting her footing, but she wasn't entirely commercial. This album is definitely much more commercial than her first album, and then her stuff has only become more commercial from there. I feel like this is the first album where I would definitely say that a lot of her tracks started to become definitely more like singles, just pop chart tracks. But on a whole, yes, I do like My Everything. And I like a lot of the singles that came off of this track, or off of this album, because honestly, that's what this album was, just a collection of singles. Although I do think that she has an intro that's a short track, and it kind of ties into her end track. So there was some thought, there was some construction here. But for the most part, I mean, this is just so she could get a whole bunch of singles out there. But yeah, like I said, I like a lot of the singles, and I like the majority of the tracks on here. There are only maybe one or two tracks that I don't like. Hands on Me, I really don't like that track really at all. And I think even just a little bit of Your Heart, I don't really like much at all either.
So what about this sterile generic pop album makes it any better than any other sterile generic pop album?
I like the chat right now. So someone has noted, and again, I hope this goes in the wiki, that I like and enjoy Ariana Grande more than Death Grips and Swans. And I just want to say that is false. That's not true. Because you've only put one greater than sign, and I would put at least 3. No, but to be honest, in response to that comment, they're so different that I don't know if I really compare them in that way.
Well,
I'm going to give this a higher rating than I gave those things. You better believe it. But I don't know if I would say that.
And that's unfair anyway, because he only heard one album from both artists. And in the case of Swans, I mean, he heard Filth. I mean, come on, like, but okay.
Okay. Back to your question.
Yes.
I like shitty pop. I don't know if you know this about me. Let's see. What have I recommended to you before that was an album?
Well,
I recommended some pop, right?
You recommended
but I recommended Carly Rae.
No, you didn't recommend Carly Rae. You recommended Haim, and the thing about that was also sterile and boring. But this is like on the level of accessibility in music, right? You've got your super accessible, anyone can listen, I like this kind of stuff. And then to the right of that even, you've got top 40 shit, where it's like it is truly just one and the same, no matter who you're listening to. And Ariana Grande falls squarely into that category, where I found Haim to be kind of boring and whatever. I didn't really question.
I don't. Okay, well, let me just say this. I don't know if that's 100% true. I think listening to it today, I would say yes. I 100% agree with you. I even mentioned it. This is super commercial and mainly to just get a whole bunch of singles. But at the time, a lot of these tracks were not necessarily what the current pop landscape sounded like. To the point that I'll mention that, like, she has this, and especially in the first album, and even a little bit here on some of the tracks, she has this kind of like 90s R&B vibe, like very akin to like maybe a Mariah Carey's.
Yeah,
right,
I did actually notice that. But that doesn't make her original.
I don't think. Yeah, no, so I'm not saying she's original, but I also wouldn't have put her like, okay, this is like the top 40s formula for this time frame.
But you've got a song like Break Free, which is a song that would have flown over well in like 2010 with the obnoxious, good female vocalist and DJ EDM producer with bass drops and EDM sections where the whole rave jumps up and throws their glow sticks in the air.
Right.
So even if there are moments on here where I feel that she was maybe doing a throwback, or maybe not even just a throwback, just kind of bringing a sound back to the top 40 that hadn't quite been there, there are also moments where it is absolutely, in fact, it may even be past its due date at certain points. Like, that kind of EDM stuff was still popular in 2014. When the fuck did the Chainsmokers become big? Not a little after this, but it still is today. But like, that thing was around for like a decade ago, and she was doing that here too. So I'll start talking about what I think about this album, even though I mean, the only song I liked was the final track, and even then, I didn't like it very much. Now, to be clear, I was listening. I was not listening to the bonus track, so that was the final track that I heard was the title track, "My Everything." That's the final track of the official track list, and that song was okay. I mean, it was written pretty well.
That's interesting because I think from what I've heard, the general consensus, if you were going to pick just one track off of this thing, from what I've heard, the general consensus is "Love Me Harder" is the track that people kind of place as kind of the best track coming out of this
but
thing.
that song again, with many of the other songs on here that I thought were kind of standing out above the rest in some ways, there was always something that annoyed me. Like in that song, this annoying like "love me, love me, love me" thing she does with her voice, like in the background. Oh, another thing she does. Okay, one thing she does that annoys me in pretty much every song is she, like, every song in the background, she's got a choir of Arianas singing as well in the background instrumental, just making these like moans.
Yeah, that's what the grande part is.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's the grande half.
Yeah,
where there's a lot of her.
Well, it ain't good. It annoyed the fuck out of me. Another song that did something kind of interesting was in "Break Your Heart Right Back." They had this like kind of guitar break that sounded a lot like 90s pop, like a lot like 90s pop.
Yeah, for sure.
But everything else was just this boring 2010s production that was boring as shit, and it didn't even mesh. Like once it got back into the pop production of today with the guitar in the background, it just felt like a weird mesh that didn't even work. The features on this album are bad. I mean, Iggy Azalea, no shit.
Yeah, that one didn't age well.
She's awful, period. She was never good. Big Sean, one of the most infamously bad rappers out there, has a feature on here. ASAP Rocky, or it not.
Yeah,
not Rocky.
I think they were dating at the time.
Oh, is that the case? Well, maybe. Anyway, ASAP Rocky. I said ASAP Rocky. That is wrong. That was a slip of the tongue. ASAP Ferg. Sorry. ASAP Ferg on Hands on Me is just disgusting, and it's the worst thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, that track is bad.
I can make your hair rocky ASAP. Yeah, no thanks. That track's fucking awful. Also, it's between like these two piano ballads, which I thought.
Yeah, I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that was weird. That was also the worst produced song on the record, probably. Everything about that I hated. Although I will say my least favorite song was Break Free, without a doubt. I hate stuff like that with a burning passion. Not EDM in general. It's this blend of EDM and top 40 pop that's been popular in like the first half of this decade, maybe still is. Where you had a big, grandiose, uplifting chorus with, I mean, I said female singer, but it could be male singers too. It's just each one had its own flavor that was annoying in its own right. And then you have the bass drop and the shitty EDM melody that sucks, and like they didn't even try. Absolutely despised that track. That hated it. Problem, yeah, awful. Like, I don't know. Like, this is bad. This is not good. The only songs besides My Everything that I didn't dislike, the intro was acceptable. One Last Time is acceptable. And Just a Little Bit of Your Heart is acceptable. But not, like, on the positive end of the spectrum. They're just... they're not, like, killing me to listen to them. But for the most part, this is crap. Like, I don't... I'll give her credit. She's a good singer. I think she puts on some affects on her voice sometimes that kind of annoys me, but... You know, I'm not going to deny that she's a good singer, but so many pop stars are good singers that it doesn't mean that these songs are good or that this album is bringing anything special to the table, because I really don't think it is.
Yeah, I had a strong feeling that you and I would probably disagree on this one.
Yeah, I figured that when you recommended this, that was your intention.
Trying to think if there's anything else to contextualize here. The one thing I will say is that, so I mentioned Love Me Harder. The Weeknd is on that track, and this kind of jump-started his career here in the States because he's from Canada, and I think at this time he had already had some hits over there. And
House of Balloons was like, was popular, but I think it may have only been popular with like kind of music head type people here. I don't know if he had hits off of that album. I'm not certain, but I know that was 2013. But then after this would have been like his breakout shit here, like what the hell is that album with his face on it? I don't even remember. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know about this.
I think for me, it just really comes down to I like shitty pop, and this is like this is quintessential.
Well, I would know. Quintessential's like your Katy Perry's. This isn't like that level shitty pop.
No, this is a quintessential listen, not a quintessential shitty pop.
Oh, okay.
I think that this is above. Like, if I'm gonna rank all the like solo female pop artists of right now, I think a lot of what Ariana Grande does stands above some of the others. Although I will say that I feel like, I think I mentioned this before, her albums from here on out continue to get commercial, but it's like commercial in the standpoint of like, you can tell they're such a product of their time. You know, where I feel like in this one, I mean, you mentioned it, right? There's some flavor of different eras in some of the tracks. Now I feel like a lot of her stuff is just like so much like, this is exactly what pop is supposed to sound like today. So all the songs sound like that.
Mm-hmm.
And lost a little bit of that, at least flavor or differentiation between others. She just actually released a new album a couple months ago.
Yeah, that actually got, from what I saw, received relatively positively on the sites I frequent. And what I did notice too was that it seemed like both of her next two albums got received more positively than this among the sites that I'm on, like Rate Your Music and such. I don't know if I would like them more than this or not, but it just seemed that to me, what this did absolutely nothing special, like not a single thing that I could point out and say, yeah, I really see why she deserves to be like a pop queen. I really don't. I mean, this is stuff that is designed to blend in on the radio, and I'm sure it did just that. I really doubt that if you were a frequent Top 40 listener, that when Ariana Grande burst onto the scene, that you heard her and thought, man, this is something that I really haven't heard. even if it was different than other stuff, it's not like it's some kind of pop revolution, you know. So.
You have any other thoughts on this one?
No, I mean, I'm ready to sum it up if you are.
Okay, go for it.
All right, yeah, so I would give this album a 4 out of 10. I think that this is just, like I said, sterile and generic. Absolutely, I mean, it's nothing special about this in any way to me. And even the tracks I didn't hate, I didn't really like that much. I feel that Ariana Grande obviously has talent, but I shouldn't even feel the need to point that out. I'm just reaching for good things to say because I don't have any. Like, that's the honest truth. I don't have anything good to say, really. Title track's all right. That's all I got. I would not recommend this. If you like top 40 pop, you could probably do better than this, to be honest. Well, top 40 pop of this caliber, maybe this is among the better ones. But pop music in general, certainly not.
Okay, and I give this probably around a 7. I want to be clear on that rating, though. I don't think I give the album a 7 necessarily. Like, I don't think the album construction or composition is really that special at all. Like I mentioned, this album is more, if anything, just a collection of a whole bunch of singles that ended up on top 40. But I like pretty much all of those singles.
Alexa's yelling at you again.
And now Alexa's yelling at me because she thinks her name is Single. Maybe Alexa is single. Maybe she's trying to tell me something. But anyway, yeah, like I mentioned, I like all the singles on here. So just for that alone, I probably give this one about a 7.
Well,
and I recommend it, but again, you have to like shitty pop.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody in this chat is the kind of people who.
I don't know. I'm reading the comments right now, and it looks like some people are gonna pick it up. Is all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see about that. Anyway, I feel like we're just about done with this, right? So let's go ahead and move on to what I recommend.
That was my everything.
To Steven. That was Steven's everything. It was not my everything. That's our final rating.
Put that on the back of the box.
We will move on to what I recommended to Steven last episode, which was the video game Amnesia: The Dark Descent. This is a indie game for the PC by Frictional Games, horror game developer, who prior to this game released the Penumbra trilogy. Very similar games to this. Amnesia was very much a viral success. It honestly jump-started the awful YouTube trend of YouTube gamers who scream at scary games with face cam.
PewDiePie really can
absolutely
look.
In fact,
to this game.
PewDiePie should base his career is where it is because of this game. It is, and a lot of other people as well. Now, I will be clear: this game was not the first horror game to. It was before the trend of horror games that were designed specifically to get reactions out of people. Rather, it just started the trend of people reacting to horror games, which then caused horror games to be designed to get people to react to them. I want to make that clear. This is not like that. This was before that happened. What else do I have to say about this? Not really much. I think I'll let Steven begin, and then I can talk about it more after that.
Yeah, so I want to mention something here. This one's going to be a little bit different because this has never happened before, but this is this game. I played through a good bit of it, and it just made me sick. I don't know why. I think it was honestly, actually, I think it's a collection of the fact that the game often removes control from you and spins a whole bunch, like spins you a whole bunch, and then also, I'm sure we'll talk about this, but one of the main mechanics is as you lose sanity, your vision becomes blurry, and you wave back and forth, and for whatever reason, this game made me sick. So I couldn't play too much of it, but I also watched a little bit of a Let's Play. It was actually a a commentary-less Let's Play, which is good because as Lewis mentioned, the majority of the Let's Plays on this game are just people screaming.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really help anything. So I tried to seek out one that was just a pure Let's Play or a pure playthrough of some or most of the game. So with that out of the way, I'll talk about this. I think one thing that I'll mention that so I just mentioned that sanity mechanic. I think that sanity mechanic is I don't know if it was necessarily revolutionary, but it's something that I think that this game really tried to explore and develop. So other games before had utilized the sanity mechanic.
Eternal Darkness did it really
Eternal
famously,
Darkness, yep, that was the one I was looking for. Eternal Darkness specifically utilized the sanity mechanic. In Metal Gear Solid, one of the bosses utilized something very similar where you're kind of like breaking the fourth wall a bit and playing with the expectations of the viewer in a way that creates additional despair and kind of increases
mind fuckery. It increases mind.
Yeah,
fuckery.
a little bit of mind fuckery. There was a instance where my character started to become less sane, and a bug was on the screen, crawling around on the screen, and that sort of stuff I think is super interesting because that's a really great way to increase the horror factor, right? Without actually doing anything that changes the landscape. You know, you don't have to do a whole bunch of jump scares. It just creates more drama, I guess I'll say, like for the player as you're playing, and it creates a sense of urgency, especially because a lot of the sanity mechanic revolved around are the lights on and that sort of a thing. So you have to go find a light source and turn the light source on, or you have to take out your lamp or whatever. So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing is I want to say that this game really, because it was kind of a viral sensation, I don't think it was the first game to have done it at all. I looked at games like Myst and even their Penumbra collection, but this game, really the storytelling was through the environment. So one, a lot of environmental puzzles, but then also finding artifacts within the environment that flesh out the world. I feel like this game really kickstarted that as a idea, and a lot of games since have tried to capture that. And the other thing that this game did was it created this horror genre that was more, and in fact, when you start the game, it explicitly tells you more about running away or finding a place and sitting in there and hiding, right, and waiting out the enemy.
Yeah.
A lot of games since then have tried to do that. A lot of pretty bad games, honestly, have tried to capture the Amnesia thing, as you mentioned, strictly so that they could be YouTube sensations. But a lot of good games have done it too to great effect, like the Alien game, the recent Alien game, Alien Isolation.
Outlast is another famous example.
Yeah, Outlast.
Well,
the only thing that I will mention just quickly about that is the other thing that this game kind of kickstarted was this concept of, because the environment told a lot of the story, there's this thing that happens where you go into a room in this game, and a lot of games do it now. You go into a room and you have to literally open every single drawer and file through every single wardrobe. And that can be a little off-putting, I want to say. Like, that's not necessarily fun or engaging. It does flesh out the world, but it also just means that you have to like sit there and literally open every drawer to find the one that has a thing in it.
Yeah, well, so
that's really my only major criticism of this, by the way. I want to get that out there.
So I think that Amnesia, if it is most influential in anything, it's absolutely the idea of making the player vulnerable from the enemy. Not the first game to do it. Penumbra did it. Like, Amnesia is very much, and a lot of people don't really know this because they've never played Penumbra or never heard of it. Amnesia is essentially just an amped up Penumbra. It is very similar to Penumbra. The mechanics are practically the same, but it takes place in a better setting with a better story, and it takes out some of the stupid stuff that Penumbra had in it. And this game just refines that formula, essentially. Now, what I think both these games do extraordinarily well, and the reason why this caught on, is I truly do not think there's anything more... There is no terror that's more lasting than feeling truly vulnerable. Because jump scares, whether they're done well or not, no one will deny, or maybe, no one, but most people will admit, they'll make you jump. They'll give you a scare in the moment, sure. And maybe you'll be afraid, oh no, there might be a jump scare, and that can be kind of scary. But is that truly memorable? Like, is that truly something where you think, I really loved that experience? I mean, for me, it certainly isn't. It's just an unpleasant, shitty experience where you feel cheated. Not always, but most of the time. And instead, this game does have jump scares, maybe 3 that I can think of.
Especially when it's done to a frequent effect, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think of something like a Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah.
Where that game is really just built around the lead up to the jump scare.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And I just call that one out, not as the most egregious example, right? But as probably another brand of horror game, which is that you're waiting for the jump scare.
Yeah, for sure.
And some games go even deeper into it. I don't think games are the worst location for jump scares. In fact, I think the thing about a video game that makes a jump scare more amplified is that you are in control. So you are the one forcing yourself to go and have the jump scare happen.
Yeah. As opposed to a movie where it just...
As opposed to a movie.
Just loud noise and...
Right. It's very similar to if you were to go into one of those haunted houses where it's because you have control, it's you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And there are games...
But this is very different than that. And you mentioned it. This is very different than that because there's this just constant threat. And I want to point out we've been calling back to classic games that are very similar, but I think of Resident Evil 3. If you or anyone haven't played Resident Evil 3, the main concept of Resident Evil 3 is there's this, the villain creates this super monster, and that super monster is always kind of lurking, and you never know when they're really going to show up, but they're always kind of stalking you, and at any moment they could appear and you have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And this, and we mentioned Alien Isolation as well, kind of are playing at a similar concept.
Yeah.
Where at any time something bad could happen, you're not in control of it, you're very vulnerable, and you have to deal with it.
I think the thing that Alien Isolation gets wrong, though, and I do like Alien Isolation. I think Alien Isolation is a good horror game. And it was scary when I played it, no doubt about it. But the thing that game gets wrong is that it's kind of annoying. In a lot of ways, the AI, the monster, is annoying. Yeah, it's scary, but it's annoying. In this game...
Yeah, because the other thing about it is you have to strike the right balance, right? And I think that's what this game does so well.
For sure. Yeah.
Is it strikes the right balance between you feeling vulnerable and there's something there, and you being able to take a breath and explore again, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas Alien Isolation, it's that thing could just show up, and then it's fuck.
And then once that happens, the AI is just rubber banded to the player to the point where you have no chance. Right. In this game, you always feel as though you're in danger, even when you're not. There are points...
the sanity mechanic helps with that.
For sure. Although this isn't always the case. Occasionally in the game's score, there will be brighter sounds, like when you just completed a puzzle or you enter a new area and you think, man, I'm safe. But that shit goes away fast. The small moments of levity and reprise you get in this game are very short. This game does so many things right, it's hard to say where to even start, but I will say one thing that I think is incredibly brilliant about this game's design is the way in which it actively encourages you to feel vulnerable in every environment that you are in. What I mean by this is, in the dark, the monsters can't see you. But your sanity meter goes down, and if you stay in the dark for too long, you pass out. And on top of that, in the dark, you can't see the monsters as well. So so you're always worried you're gonna stumble right into it, which is totally something that can happen. On the flip side, if you're in the light, you can play the game easier, but the monsters can see you at all times when you're in the light. So it doesn't matter where you are, you will not feel safe. And another brilliant thing about having the sanity meter is it encourages the player not to look at the monsters. Because if you look at them, your sanity meter goes down like a motherfucker. If you were able to sit there and look at the creature the whole time, you would absolutely lose the effect of how scary the monster is. For one thing, it's a disturbing looking creature, but honestly, it's not that scary, and it couldn't be.
Yeah, and it looks a little silly.
Yeah, it looks a little silly. It couldn't be scary. You can never design a monster that's scary to be on screen at all time. You can't. Right, and that's why some of the most effective horror films try to show little of the creature, like a movie like The Thing, where you don't even know what it is. You know, stuff like that. It's always better when you don't know, because the unknown's always scarier than what you know. Always. And this game ensures that what you're when that monster's chasing you, you're not looking at it chasing you, you're just hearing that like high-pitched squealy guitar noise that plays whenever the monster runs after you. That is the tensest and most terrifying sound you will ever hear. On top of its growls and footsteps, the sound design in this game is immaculate. It is perfect for what this game is trying to do. And then, like I said, when the monster's chasing you, you're hearing it, you're not seeing it. So it's really important that the sound design is as good as it is.
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about is kind of one of the first encounters with a or the monster. You kind of go into a set of rooms that are a little bit drowned out.
Oh, yes.
Water has seeped in. It's like a little bit of flooding.
Yeah.
And you have to stay on top of these boxes or else this thing will come and get you and you can't see it.
It's invisible.
It's invisible. You can just see its movement. You can hear it and you can just see its movement on the water.
Yeah. And like the sound of the water splashing when you're splashing and when it's splashing is ear-piercingly loud. Because
yes.
it is okay. This section of this game, I've played this game a lot. And it's lost its effect on me almost entirely. Because I now have memorized where the monster spawns are. It no longer seems to me like there's a monster always there. I know exactly when it's there and when it's not. There are even sound cues for when it's there and when it's not. It's obvious. So this game, not scary to me anymore. But this section gets me every time. Because this is like the most intense thing I may have ever played. That water bit, maybe like the most intense thing I've ever done. When you step in that water, like, you know you're fucked because you can hear your footsteps so loud, and then the thing starts running to you, the music amps up. It is intense.
And I want to expand on how incredible I think this scene is, because I think that this scene really captures the use of the medium too. So the first thing I want to mention is that I think a portion of it is, you mentioned it, right? The unknown is scarier than the known, and you never know. This thing is invisible.
Yeah.
You barely even know where it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be right in front of you while you're on a box.
Yeah.
It probably is, honestly.
And when you're running in the water and you hear both your footsteps and its, you don't even know how close it is to you.
Right.
Now, and one of the best...
So one thing what I wanted to expand upon a little bit is that the way that this scene opens, and for the majority of this scene in the game, the boxes are laid out in a very specific structure, right? You actually start kind of in a corridor, and it's like very simple to see, oh, okay, I go on this box, I'm going to have to get in the water in a little bit, but then I can hit this box, and so on, until you get to the end, where you get in a large open room. There are a couple boxes in there that still seem to have a very defined structure and are leading you to a point. But that point that it leads you to is, there's nothing around you at that point, really.
Yeah.
Not really any boxes. The only thing that you have next to you is the door to get out. But to open the door, you have to go in the water.
Uh-huh.
And what the game does is it gives you no real indication of what you're supposed to do, but in this island that you are now a part of with a monster that's invisible, that's right in front of your face, you have like some meat or something, I want to say.
Yeah, they're like arms and legs.
And it's like arms and limbs, and what you're supposed to do, just through context, just through experimentation, is learn to throw that so the monster goes and starts eating it. to give you enough of a reprieve to open this door. But even with that reprieve, at this point, I started watching the playthrough. At least in the playthrough that I was watching, once you open that door, there's still a corridor that you have to walk down, and it's a narrow corridor with pretty much nothing. And at that point is really where what you're talking about gets amplified. It's your footsteps in the water and the monster's footsteps in the water, even louder than yours, as you're trying to sprint down this tunnel to get to safety.
Yeah.
I think that whole section is just incredible.
It is immaculate. It is, and again, like I said, it gets me every time because even if I know what's going on, it's just so intense to be running away from something you know is like right behind you, and every time you fall off a box, it just makes your heart skip. It's like, shit, no. You know, I love this. I love this bit so much. Is it the best part of the game? It might be. It's one of the more famous parts of the game. But there are other bits in this game that I think are just as terrifying, if not more. Because I try to think back to my first playthrough of this game, right? When I first played this game, it took me weeks to beat it. And it wasn't because the game was hard. I mean, the game's... It's got some length to it. It's not that long of a game on its own. But I was so scared, I did not want to keep going. I would sit in a corner and spend like an entire section of my playtime when I would play the game just kind of in one room because I genuinely did not want to leave. And there are some sections of the game, like there's this cell block area that is so terrifying because the entire thing is structured like a maze. It's super dark. And there's just a monster in there with you. And so every time you want to go to find a new door or to find a new area, a new corridor to go down, you always believe that that monster could just be there on the other side. You don't know where the hell it is in that maze-like area. You don't know how to get around. It's terrifying. And another section of the game like this is in a sewer section with the second creature. There's like two main monsters besides the water one. The other one's like taller, and I think it's faster, and it takes more health when it hits you. But this section is a lot like the cell block, but there's water everywhere, so it can hear your footsteps, and it's attracted to your footsteps, similar to the water monster. Only now you're not safe when you're out of the water. It's sections like this where I'm like, this is without a doubt the scariest game I've ever played. Like, I just want to a lot of people give it that accolade, and I will have to agree. Like, from what I have played, and I've played quite a bit of horror games because I tend to enjoy them, this is without a doubt the scariest one. The way it sets up the scenes with the creature is like, it forces you to basically have to come to contact with that monster, and you really don't want to ever. But you'll, like, it makes it so that you don't want to open doors. You don't want to leave rooms when you feel like you're safe. And the fact that it can do that, when having played through it as much as I have, I know that truthfully, you're really not at risk that much if you just pay attention. But you do not know that. And man,
so speaking of opening doors, I want to talk about something that I think it's a super minor detail, but I think it just works so well for this game, to the point where, like, even before I started playing, just this mechanic made me sit there and go, wow, like the ability and the usage of this mechanic could be utilized to such a great effect, and I think this game does that. So specifically, the mechanic I'm talking about is opening doors, right? It's not like you click the door and it opens. You have to hold the button down, you have to slowly move the door open, or you have to press a button to like slam it open or closed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an incredible mechanic for a horror game. Because honestly, on a first playthrough of this, you never know if that time you're taking to slowly open the door, if there's something behind that door. It just increases that vulnerability.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's another thing. When you're being chased, what you have to do is hide. It's all you can do. And a lot of times that will involve you entering a room. Now, I want you to imagine you're running down a corridor, you hear this sound effect when that thing's chasing you, which I can't stress how good the score is to this game. It's so tense. It is so scary. And you know it's like right behind you. And when you get to a door to go inside, you can't that door, the door is almost always a fucking pull door. So you have to stand a distance from the door. You have to stand still and take the time to pull it open and shut it behind you. And when you shut it behind you, you may catch a glimpse of the monster right there, right before it starts beating the door down to come inside. That is like, and it does this in the water bit when you're running away from the creature and you've got no boxes. You have to open each door and shut them behind you. Every time you have to stop to open a door, it just makes your heart skip because you just feel that much more vulnerable. And I'm glad you said this too, because this is the way I was going to put it. Imagine if you just clicked the door and it opened for you. You could just keep running, you know? You can't do that. You have to stop, which is brilliant. Man, there's so many design choices here that I can't get over how good they are. And one thing you said you were going to criticize the game for, which actually I think is a plus. You said you have to go in and individually open each drawer. You have to go in, you know, and when you want to open drawers, you have to pull them with the mouse. Similar to the door, everything you do, like spinning a wheel, you have to spin the mouse around. Everything you do, you have to like really manipulate.
Which I just want to say, so I actually played this in the Amnesia collection on PS4. And I want to say it could very much be a function of the controller, but this is also a very specific criticism. I found that opening and closing mechanic to not work that well on a controller. A lot of times, for whatever reason, my character would not, like, I would be holding the button to then move the stick to open it, and it just wouldn't open all the way, or it would stop holding the button for whatever reason. It was a very specific thing. Might have just been in the collection. Might have just been a function of the platform that I was playing on. But I did notice that, so I just wanted to get that out of the way as a little bit of context.
Yeah, because on PC it's really easy, and it's very intuitive. But what it does is it puts you in Daniel, he's the main character here, puts you in his shoes. Like, you really feel like you are partaking in every action that he is partaking in.
Oh yeah, wait, just 1 second. Alonzo, this is live, my dude. This is all jazz, baby. We're freewheeling here. We're reading the comics. We see that.
Yeah, I see you.
My neck, my back came up twice, and as it should. You know what I'm saying? Anyway.
Yeah.
Back to this.
But yeah, like I was saying, I think it's just another way to put you into the terror of this game, is to make you really feel like your mouse is Daniel's hand. It makes you feel like you are him. And I can't stress how important that is. And that's one of the reasons why this game is just so great. It's just such a great horror game. Like, you are right there in the action in this game. Everything that happens, you feel like it's happening to you. Everything you learn, you feel like you're really learning. And it's just so immersive, which is so important that it took all these little things that don't really matter. Like being able to pick up bottles and chuck them until they break. It's such an unnecessary thing, but it immerses you in this universe. And the fact that they took the time to consider all these little things. And now let's keep in mind that a lot of these things are carryovers from the Penumbra series. So if anything, I should be giving the credit to that series. And I do strongly recommend Penumbra Black Plague. That game is horrific. It is almost just as scary as Amnesia. If anything, the monster may be a little scarier in that game, actually. I strongly recommend that as well. But, and that's like more of a sci-fi setting, kind of. It's more modern. It's interesting. That's a great game, too. But anyway, we're talking about this one. But yeah, so a lot of things that carried over from that game are just such brilliant mechanics. And they work so well. I love that you're sliding drawers open, you're picking up objects and moving them around to find little tinder boxes so you can light up the world. Everything has a weight to it. And I just feel like if the game didn't have this, it really would be just another horror game. Maybe it'd be a little scary, but it would need more jump scares than it has because you wouldn't feel immersed enough to be scared of some random thing walking around. It's like, why does that matter? You know, that's not scary. Well, it is when you think it's really there.
Yeah, so I think that's probably a good summary of this one. I think we could talk about this one a lot more than we have here. This game truly was revolutionary. I mean, it does speak to, we mentioned the Alien series, or the most recent Alien game, right? That's a AAA title. This Amnesia is not a AAA title, but Amnesia has become so impactful and so revolutionary that it spawned its own series and style of horror games. As you mentioned, it spawned people's careers.
Yeah.
On YouTube. It spawned clones and copycats, but then it's even made its way into a lot of AAA mainstream horror franchises. I look to PT. Definitely took a lot of things from this game. Unfortunately, that game never got developed, but the PT demo, the Aliens game, even the most recent Resident Evil 7, very similar in style and concept to Amnesia. So we could talk about this thing for a lot more, but I think for our little podcast here, might be able to wrap it up. So I'm gonna give it a rating. I would give this thing, and again, I want to be clear, I did not actually get to play a lot of this.
Yeah, so take it with a grain of salt.
So take it with a grain of salt. It's just what I know of this. It's what I've seen of it, a lot of things I've heard about it, and what I did get to play. I personally, I want to say this before I give a recommendation, I personally would not recommend it because it did make me sick, and it's very strange. I don't know why. Luckily, I got to experience some of the scares, so I at least got to see what that was like. And then I did watch a playthrough.
Was it scary to you? Is an important question because you didn't say that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This thing is terrifying. I mean, even when you're not in danger, you're in danger.
Yeah.
Just from the sanity mechanic alone. You know, like your character is constantly being pulled and moved in weird ways. And I think those things actually were kind of why it got me sick, which is interesting. But anyway, but then from a rating, I probably give this like an 8 or a 9. I just think it's so impactful and so revolutionary, and took so much of what came before it and was able to collect it into something really great that's spawned a whole bunch of really great things for the horror game franchise and genre.
Yeah, so this is like top 5 favorite games for me. I mean, I've played it multiple times, even though it doesn't scare me anymore, just because I love the atmosphere and the game. I just appreciate so much about its design that I almost enjoyed learning everything about it, the ins and outs of the game, where the spawns are, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, that ruined the effect, but it made me appreciate how effective it was with how little and honestly obvious a lot of its design elements are. Because the first time I played this, like I said, it took me a long time because I was too terrified to keep going. I didn't want to continue to play the game because it was just that scary. And that speaks so much. You know, the ending to this game is very weak. The entire ending sequence, which I won't really say anything about, it's very weak. But this is the kind of game where I really don't know how much that matters. Like, I feel that this is the kind of game where the only thing that matters is the experience you have playing it. And how are you going to end this game in a satisfying way when the ending can't be experiential, really? It's going to have to stop. The experience is going to have to stop. And frankly, I don't know many ways they could have made it work. It was always going to be unsatisfactory because the thing that made this game great, I mean, sure, the story's interesting. It's kind of stupid here or there, but it's an interesting story with a lot of mythical elements and, you know, interesting characters and stuff like that. Some stupid writing here or there. But you know, that's not what you're in the game for. You're there because of the experience it's giving you. And like I said, I just feel like as soon as that experience ends, it's going to be unsatisfying no matter what. So I don't know how much I want to allow that ending to affect my rating of the game. I suppose if I were to rate it, I want to say 10, but I don't feel like that's fair. So I'll say 9.5 just to allow room for that multiple endings thing in the final sequence because it's not good. So just to factor that into the rating so I'm not being unfair. But keep in mind, the experience of playing this game it is absolutely a 10 out of 10 experience, and it's an experience that it got Steven sick, so he struggled to experience it. That's fine. But I would absolutely recommend this to anyone who can at least tolerate horror. If you're one of those people who is too terrified to even watch a horror movie, then obviously don't play this.
Do not play this.
No, absolutely, obviously not. But
because one thing we did mention, right? There is a large difference between a horror game experience and a static 2-dimensional horror experience.
Oh yeah.
This, you have autonomy and control. And if you can't get through a 2-dimensional horror experience, it only is amplified here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I love horror, and I struggled to want to play the game. So take that as a way to, like, it's horrifying. On the horror scale, this is a 10. Let's put that up, right? Like on the scale of how scary is this? This is the scariest thing I've literally ever experienced. Like, period. Not only game, film, anything. Never been more scared in my life. Playing or witnessing some kind of media. And Penumbra may as well be right up there with it in that regard, because they're super similar. But if you can even tolerate horror, I think this is an experience that is absolutely worth having. This is the kind of game you just have to experience. You have to, because there's something really that I think there's something to appreciate about this game. Even if all it does is scare you so much that you can't finish it, that is a fucking accomplishment. You know, it is an accomplishment that this game was making me struggle to play it strictly because I was so scared of things that weren't even happening. Like, that is amazing. Sound design is immaculate. The graphics are pretty good, especially for an indie game. They're pretty good. The level design and everything is perfect for what it's trying to do. If it wants to be maze-like and difficult to find your way around, there's a reason that it is maze-like. And when it needs to, not be maze-like, there's a reason for that too. And there's a lot of scenes that we did kind of talk about and maybe give away a little bit, but there's a lot that we didn't give away, and I don't want to give away anymore. Absolutely play this and experience this for yourself if you haven't. I can't recommend this enough.
So 2 quick things before we move on, just to wrap this one up. One, I think this goes without saying, but another concept that this game kind of kickstarted was the idea of the headphone game. I think 100% the best way to experience this game is with headphones on.
And the lights off.
Yes. You really have to dive 100% into, I am going to scare the hell out of myself.
Yeah.
Not that I say you have to, like from the standpoint of this game holds up even if you don't do those things. But if you really want the true experience, you should try to do those things.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other thing is, Lewis, I doubt we're going to go back to the rest of this series. So do you want to give maybe a super quick synopsis of how you feel the other games in the Amnesia series hold up?
So I did talk about Penumbra, which isn't technically Amnesia, but I do just want to say that Penumbra Black Plague is almost just as good as this. It's just got stupid shit in it. I recommend that as well. And that was the precursor to this game, but play this game first. This is the essential one for sure. But if you really enjoy this, Penumbra's great. Machine for Pigs, I was super excited for, and it's got to be one of the biggest letdowns for me ever. Not that it's bad, because there's a lot about it that's really cool. It was designed by a different developer, because these guys were working on Soma, which I have yet to play all of. And I may go back and restart Soma and play it. But I think the effect on frictional games, horror games, is lost on me now, sadly, because I played these too much and I know what they do. Anyway, Machine for Pigs has absolutely impeccable environmental design. It takes place in like the early 1900s, maybe late 1800s. This game was like 1800s. That game a little later, and you've got like the kind of industrial revolution stuff. A lot of it's very steampunky, and the story to that game outshines the story to this game in terms of reading the notes and learning the ins and outs of that world. It's disturbing. And that's what they really went for, is to just, it was supposed to, I feel like they almost wanted the story to disturb you more than the game itself. And sadly, I don't think that was a good choice. They made a lot of bad decisions in A Machine for Pigs. Like, for example, the actual monster, when you point your lantern at it, your light flickers so you know it's there. And a lot of really bad decisions like that. If I remember correctly, I think they also took away the sanity meter. There's a lot less to interact with in the environment. Even like objects that were reused from this game, you can no longer like pick up. A lot of stuff like that. It was just a major downgrade to this game, almost as if it was like a ROM hack. It does a lot of things right for itself, and if you like this game, it's an interesting game to play, but don't get your hopes up. It is not nearly as much of a masterpiece as this game is. As a spiritual successor, it's fine. There's a lot of really good stuff about it, and I think it's good for one playthrough, but it's no Dark Descent. That's all I can say about it.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I think we can move on to our recommendations for next week.
Yeah, so Steven, why don't you go ahead and recommend what you want to recommend to me?
Okay, so I'm going to get this out of the way. All right, we're going into our 20th episode. I'm tired of all this uneducational trash. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's time for us to learn something here on Get Recc'd.
Mm-hmm.
We've been recommending movies and TV shows that are just candy, but where's the learnings?
For sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So this is what I'm going to recommend to you, Lewis. I'm going to recommend to you 2 YouTube playlists.
Ooh.
The first YouTube playlist is called Price Points. It's a YouTube playlist from Epicurious. They're a publication medium. In Price Points, they have experts come out to a location and then try to guess which of A or B is priced higher. So, for instance, there's one with a knife expert. They have the knife expert try to guess which of the knives that they present are priced higher. They have bread expert. A lot of it's centered around food because Epicurious is a food site. So that's the first playlist.
Mm-hmm.
The second playlist is from a rival food journalism publication, Bon Appetit. And it is their Gourmet Makes series. In this series, they have a pastry chef in their test kitchen make gourmet versions of junk food. So a gourmet Twinkie, a gourmet Twizzler, a gourmet Oreo, and so on.
Does this have something to do with you being the next Food Network star, Steven?
I didn't want to say anything on this episode.
Okay. Well, I'll let you wait. I'll let you say it when you want to say it then. I can't cheat you out here. That's not right. All right, so we got an episode for the foodies next time, it looks like.
Yeah, and one where we're just going to get a little learned,
yeah,
you know?
For sure.
Finally, the listeners can come here. They can go to their local library. They can subscribe to Get Recc'd using their library card and learn a thing or two.
Oh, yeah. Sounds great. Well, I'm recommending something to you that is not educational. I know. I'm so sorry. We could have had a learny episode, and I didn't do it. But I'm recommending something that you're not going to believe that I'm going to recommend this to you. But it's an album with music on it.
Shit.
So the album is called Long Season, and it is by Fishmans. Fishmans were a Japanese dub band in the 90s. Dub, slightly similar genre to reggae. Not the same thing, but... and Long Season was their 1996 album when the band began to progress into making dream pop music and progressive pop music. Long Season is a one-track album. There is one 35-minute song on it. That is it. That's the album. Yeah, I can't say much else. Fishmans broke up, and the lead singer Shinji Sato, I believe his name is. He died a little while after 1998, I want to say, or 1999, or maybe 2000. And so Long Season was their second to last album, and the band has not been together since, but they've developed, honestly, rather recently, a cult following globally for whatever reason, just because of internet hype, basically. And now they're getting more and more well-known and recognized on the internet anyway. And yes, the album's on Spotify, so it's pretty easy to get a hold of. And that is going to do it for Get Recc'd, Steven. I think we had a great time today.
Yeah, we really talked, and that's what matters. So I just want to say a couple things. One, sorry everyone that this episode was a tad late. Some stuff came up. We're trying, as we mentioned, we're trying our best to do every 2 weeks on Sunday, but life happens, unfortunately. And to that point, in 2 weeks, I will be out visiting the family in Phoenix. Lewis and I will be together once again, the power duo, side by side.
Oh, yeah.
But with that being said, it might not, in fact, it probably won't be on that Sunday. It might either be on the Saturday a day earlier or on probably a Tuesday of the following week. So just to let everyone know and to give that heads up.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to say is that shortly after this episode, maybe tomorrow, maybe later tonight, I don't know, but we will be putting up our next bonus episode, episode 19.5, which you will see. It'll be pre-recorded, so you're not going to see it streamed live, but everyone can be excited for that coming soon. And I think that's all we have to say, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Well,
so with that, those were our thoughts. Those were our recommendations. Get Recc'd.